Good morning, and thank you for waiting patiently down the back there.
No, it's kia ora koutou. My name's Dean Knight. I'm a professor of law at Te Haringa Waka, Victoria University of Wellington. Thanks for the opportunity.
If you'd said Otago, you might have got some people.
No.
But anyway, we understand.
It's only one decent law school, but that's
we don't set them as assignments. Our students just do them naturally. In principle, I instinctively support a 4-year parliamentary term on the basis that our term at the moment is quite compressed, and I think encourages bad habits, rushed and lightweight policy development, overuse of urgency, short-termism and the like. And fundamentally, good lawmaking and policy making takes time, and I think giving the government program more time to breathe is likely to improve the outputs of that. I think also a longer term is also likely to have some benefits for parties outside the parliamentary process in terms of more time for their own policy development before elections, and obviously there's the reduced costs associated with less frequent elections. I guess my second point is more by way of rebuttal to caution you from over-egging the concern that our system lacks formal checks and balances, and less regular elections would dilute the controls on legislative and executive power. And acknowledge that in the absence of a master text or supreme constitution or a second chamber, that concern has some force, but let's not overstate it or catastrophize the problem, especially as the sting of the concern is equally applicable to a 3-year term as it is a 4-year term. In terms of checks and balances, I think of the parliamentary system as an ecosystem, and those checks and balances are often subtle and nuanced, especially because they arise a lot from political culture and practice and the like. And the counterfactual of moving to a more legal, judicially enforced set of guardrails also has some drawbacks and risks turning our civic culture on its head. And I can feel Sir Geoffrey's eyes burning in the back of my head when I say that. But yeah, it would be a big shift to build some of those guardrails. And for me, sharpening our checks and balances, improving our parliamentary practice is an important project, whether it's with a 3-year term or 4-year term. And I make some suggestions in my submission of how parliamentary committees might continue that process of continuous improvement in an incremental way, which has been very much the way of our constitutional traditions. Finally, the Bill's proposal to tie the term to the composition of select committees is a dog's breakfast.
Yeah.
Reflecting on the composition of select committees and the scrutiny is a crucial item on the reform agenda in and of itself, but shoehorning it into the term would bring dreadful complexity and conditionality into the electoral process. And I think it should be dealt with separately, even in advance of any referendum that.
Thank you, Professor. I've got 2 questions. First one from Dr. Duncan Webb.
A little actually about the referendum. One of the challenges with referenda is that, particularly if done outside of electoral cycle, is low turnout. And you might get a majority of people who voted, but only 25% of the voting public. Do you think, in light of that, referenda should require a minimum of voters, or to address this issue? How can we address that issue is a better question.
I mean, I haven't looked deeply at referenda as the model, but I know that the turnout is much higher in terms of election years, and that's one way to ensure that those referenda have the legitimacy because enough people support it. There's ways you can hardwire thresholds into there. I'm not across the pros and cons of that, but fundamentally, the constitutional change needs legitimacy, and the legitimacy may come in a number of ways, and a good turnout and a good result is obviously one of them. There are other ways you might do that over a series of a long conversation and citizen assemblies and other things like that. But ensuring what change you have is legitimate is a good way, and ensuring also that it's as far as possible done with cross-party agreement is one of the other key factors too.
So, just very quickly.
Very quickly, I wondered if you wanted to comment on the constitutional appropriateness of a decision on 3 or 4 years being the subject of coalition negotiations, given that you might have very much smaller party sizes.
Yeah, I think it's a dreadful idea. I mean, the You mean in terms of that, if this proceeded in this
Yes.
way? Yes, I think it's a dreadful idea. The great virtue of the electoral system is certainty is really the lifeblood of it, because we know what happens. People vote, there are people in for a term, that term ends, they finish. The idea that maybe there be horse trading around that in coalition negotiations or some sort of conditionality or whatever built into that, it's just too complex. And I think we risk undermining the legitimacy of our electoral system if the term is just so up for grabs.
All right. Hey, thank you very much, Professor. Very helpful.
Thank you,
So Jeffrey, we